Okay, hello everybody. Nice to see you all here and welcome to the first session of the EA Ideas and Practice series of online guest speaker events by EA for Christians. My name is Vesa Hautala. I'm the community facilitator of each, and our speaker today is Pablo Melchor from Giving What We Can. Pablo is also a co-founder and the president of the Spanish EA organization Ayuda Efectiva. Pablo will be speaking for us today about the work of Giving What We Can, what the organization is all about, its plans, and the giving pledge that Giving What We Can encourages people to take. And he will also be sharing with us some of his own story. We'll be collecting the questions via Slido. I've posted the link on the chat and I will be reposting it again for those who have just joined. You can, in Slido, you can click the link and then after that you can post your question there and upvote questions. We will be selecting questions like with a preference to more upvoted questions. So if you see a question that seems good to you, then feel free to upvote. Okay, without further ado, I think it's time to welcome Pablo and give him the floor.
Okay, Vesa, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today, and I'm always happy to talk about giving what we can, which is it's sometimes hard to choose, but I would say it's one of my favorite EA organizations and one I feel especially bound to. So let me share my screen very briefly, and then I'll come back to just talking to you directly. Okay, so first of all, I'm leaving you guys my email right here. So pablo.melchor@givingwhatwecan.org. So if there are any questions that happen to appear post-session, just feel free to email me. I always reply, even if I'm a little slow. Brief overview of what we're going to talk about. As Vesa mentioned, I'm going to start with my story so that you guys know where I come from and what my personal relationship is with the kind of stuff I'm going to be talking to you about. Then I'll explain what Giving What We Can is, of course. I'll focus on the pledge, which is the essence of the community. And then I'll talk a little bit about the community itself, the people involved and what's going on so that you guys can get a gist of it. So as I said, I'll come back to the slides a little later, but right now I'm going to start with just my story. So stopping sharing right now. Okay, there we go. Okay, so basically, I was raised a Christian in Spain. I cared about doing good, but I don't think I had really taken a serious thought about if I did have a moral obligation to help others. So I basically went through most of my life trying to be a nice guy, trying to be good to other people near me. Professionally, I became an entrepreneur. I started a digital marketing agency in 2000, which we sold, so that went really well. I then started an e-commerce company, and I really enjoyed the part of creating something where there was previously nothing. But there was something lacking. Basically, I did a lot of public speaking like I'm doing now. And I talked about my companies. I talked about the company's mission. And, to be honest, I didn't really believe in what I was selling. There was, not that I didn't believe in it. It didn't feel important, really. It didn't deepen. It didn't feel like something that I want to put all that effort and put my voice behind that much, even though these were the companies I had started. So there were a series of events that really changed my life and moved me in a different direction. And the first one is it may sound silly, but it was something that I heard on a podcast. Somebody said, the question, what do I want to do, is actually a very bad question. The question, how can I help, is a much better one. Okay, so looking a bit deeper into that, what do I want to do? I think that we live in a world where we're encouraged to constantly think about ourselves. What makes us happy? What can make us more productive? What do we look like? What do we want? What do we expect? Have you found your passion? If you haven't, look for your passion. I do believe now that what do I want to do, or what do I want, can actually be a bad question where it becomes actually navel gazing. And the other question, how can I help, is actually so much more outward looking that I think it can become much more interesting. So this is like the first seed that was planted in my head, and I kept thinking about, okay, so how can I help? Maybe a better question. All right. So while that was kind of just growing inside, my companies were growing, and we got to a point where growth had stalled. We had to make some decisions. And I thought, okay, what if for once in my life, I actually stop and I try to figure out what it is that I can contribute to the world. And I actually did that, so I quit my job and I went home to try to figure out what I could contribute. And I still had not heard about effective altruism at all. So I had no guides to follow, no 80,000 career guide, nothing like that. So basically I just sat at home. I first did a mind map. Okay, what can I do? What are my skills? What have I achieved? And I drew a few things up and started trying to look at what other people were doing. What's Bill Gates doing? What are people that I think may have a different approach to improving the world doing right now? And in that search, I came across this article by Jess Whittlestone, who's a well-known person in the effective altruism community. And I found out about EA. And EA as a whole changed everything for me. But there were a couple of things that really, I would say, really hit me hard, really changed my worldview. The first was Peter Singer's drowning child metaphor. I guess you've all are familiar with it, but in case somebody isn't, very briefly, Peter Singer tells a story about how on your way to work, wearing a very expensive suit, expensive pair of shoes, you walk past the shallow pond. You know the pond well because you buy often, and you see that there's something moving in the pond. And when you look at the child, and it's pretty obvious to you that if you don't save the child, or if somebody doesn't save them, he's gonna die. You look around and there's nobody taking care of the child. Would you keep going to work? You don't want to be late for the meeting, or would you go into the pond, ruin that expensive suit, expensive shoes, and save the child? And Peter Singer explains how everybody, when he presents a story, usually says, of course, I would jump and save the child. What's the life of a child compared to an expensive suit? But then Peter asks, okay, well, right now there are children dying in other places in the world, and you could actually be saving them for the cost of that one suit. Don't you think you have that same moral obligation to save those other children? Well, some people read this and they move on to whatever's next, and others are really struck by it. And I was in that second group. It really, it really made me think that I could be doing much more. Since I was reading about EA, I also came across Giving What We Can, which we're going to talk about today. And there's this piece, this application on their website, this little app called the How Rich Am I calculator. So I went in there and I filled in my data. And I realized that I am incredibly rich, which means I can do, not only can I do a lot, it can really be life-changing for others. So the combination of thinking what can I contribute, plus realizing that I could actually do so much in practice, really changed the way I see everything. So very soon on, I took the Giving What We Can pledge I'm going to talk about today. I also decided to get involved in the EA community. So I co-founded EA Spain with others. I was involved in community building. And trying to find my comparative advantage, I ended up starting, as Vesa mentioned, Ayuda Efectiva, which is the organization that promotes and makes effective giving possible and tax deductible from Spain. So, well, I've been involved in all these aspects of the community and different organizations, starting them up. But going back to the presentation, the theme of today is Giving What We Can. And I'm going to try to share with you guys what the community is about, why I think it is super valuable, and why I encourage you all to actually look deeper into it if you haven't already. So let me share my screen again. Okay, there we go. So I've told you my story, and I've mentioned how I took the Giving What We Can pledge. So what is Giving What We Can? Well, first of all, just to give you some background story, as most projects, Giving What We Can was not born out of the blue. It was the result of a series of influences. On the left, you have Peter Singer, drowning child parable I just told you about. Well, Peter's ideas were read widely by philosophers at Oxford, and they influenced one of them deeply, Toby Ord. If you guys are involved in the community, you must be familiar with Toby and his book, The Precipice, latest book about existential risks. Well, Toby realized that without really changing his way of life in any dramatic way, there was a lot he could do to help others. And this led him to conceive of the idea of giving what we can. And together with Will McCaskill on the right, they created the first Giving What We Can embryo back in 2009. So what is Giving What We Can? Well, first of all, it's a community. And it's a community of effective givers, people who have decided to make giving to the most effective charities a significant part of their lives. It's a community where the commitment is important and the support we provide to each other around that commitment. So we're not thinking that maybe we should do something good. We're not maybe wondering how to do good. We're actually trying already. We're committed to doing good on a regular basis. And we're also committed to learning, because effective giving is not easy. If you guys have read about effective altruism and cost prioritization at all, you'll know that it is hard to actually identify the best opportunities for doing good. So there's also a component of constantly learning and sharing ideas and thoughts about effective giving. And we also want to multiply our impact. So it's not about our personal commitment and what we do within the community. We would like to create a culture, a wider culture, in which people are inspired to give more and give more effectively. So these two elements I'm going to come back to, give more and give more effectively, are really at the heart of giving what we can. And I think they are really important and really enriching for those who are happy to embrace them. So first of all, why give more? Well, I mentioned before that this is one of the pieces that actually changed my thinking about doing good and about whether I had a moral obligation or not to do good. If you go to howrichami.givingwhatwecan.org, you can input your data. And here's one example. If you live in the US and you make $40,000 a year, you live by yourself, you're in the 2.6% of the richest part of the global population, the richest 2.6% of the global population. So, I mean, that's not like the top half, the top quarter, is the top 2.6%, which is quite extreme. When I looked at these figures for Spain, here in Spain, the average income is 19,000 euros per year. With 19,000 euros net after tax per year, you're actually in the top 5% of the world in terms of income. So you can look at it either way. You can think you have a moral obligation since you've been so lucky to actually be born in one of these countries, or you can look at this as an amazing opportunity to do good. If you are at this level of richness, you're actually 14 times richer than the global median, than the average, let's say the average person in the world. If we rank them by income and we took the one in the central position, you're 14 times richer than that person. So your ability to have an impact with that money is tremendous. And even more, if you look at doing things in poor countries where your money goes way further. If you go on with the calculator, you'll actually get suggestions or just some rough calculations of how much good you can do. So if you earn those $40,000 per year, for example, and you donate 10% of your income, you can do an amazing amount of good. You can buy more than 700 bed nets, and those protect almost twice as many people from malaria. You can give almost 4,000 treatments for schisto, which is this disease that affects millions of children in the world and does not allow them to go to school or learn. Or you can provide the equivalent of 1.1 healthy lives, really, with just an amount that will still leave you with $32,000 a year. So will not change your life dramatically, but can really change the lives of others dramatically. So I think they're just, whether you look at it, as I said, as having a moral obligation or as an amazing opportunity, I think that the case for giving more is really, really, really compelling. Now, why give more effectively? This is a part I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on, because if you guys are familiar with effective altruism, you'll have heard it. I will go over it fast just to fill in the blanks in case anybody is newer to the community. And if there's anything you would like me to give some more information on, just Let me know in the questions. So why give more effectively? We all agree that helping is important. We care about others. However, it may seem that the world's problems are so big that there's really nothing, that we're just not going to solve them. And this can lead people to not do much. But the truth is that when you actually look at the figures and you look at the data, we can make a difference. There's real people we can help. If you care about animal well-being, there's a lot of animals you can actually help. If you care about preventing risks or climate change, there's a lot you can do. But this promise of making a difference can only be true, can only become true if we actually use our resources effectively. Just basically as we do in so many other areas of our lives where we actually make calculations, choose the best value for money. Well, it's really, really important to do this when we donate, when we give. However, when we look at how people give in general, only 1/3 of people do any research whatsoever before giving. Most people are reactive. Somebody's asking for money, they listen to the story, they are compelled by that story somehow, and they decide to give. Of those who do some research, only 3% actually look at performance. Okay, where can I actually do more good? Others maybe look at financials, look at the reputation of the organizations they're considering, but only 3% look at what your money actually provides. And this may be linked to what people think about charity. Most people estimate that the best charities are like 1.5 to 2 times better than the others. But the truth is that the best charities are 10 to 100 times more effective. You're probably all familiar with this. You may not have seen this visualized in the way I'm going to show you now. Let's say that, for example, we care about water. 3 million people yearly, mostly children, die because of waterborne diseases. Okay, so one very obvious way to try to improve this is to work on sanitation. And I'm going to take this convention. I'm going to use this convention where every heart I draw is 1 year of healthy life. Well, if we invest $1,000 in piped water and flushing toilets, that would provide approximately the equivalent to 6 months of healthy life. But let's say instead of doing that, we actually work on household chlorination. Well, the impact is 10 times higher. With the same amount of money, you can help 10 times as much. Now, if instead of chlorination, we actually add zinc to the oral rehydration mixes, the impact is way, way higher. And if you actually think a little in wider terms, and okay, well, why water? I mean, people suffer waterborne diseases, but they also suffer other diseases, like maybe parasitic diseases. Well, if we decided to devote those $1,000 to malaria, the impact looks like this. So now if you look back to the left to what piped water, which may seem an obvious choice for companies, for example, trying to do good stuff in Africa. Well, when you compare that to the actual impact you can get in other interventions, the differences are huge. And if we actually compare this to something we worry about in richer countries, like maybe the development of new cancer drugs, since we actually see the suffering caused by cancer around us very closely, well, the impact of $1,000 is just tiny compared to what we can do in these other types of environments. So thinking about effectiveness can be everything in terms of what you're giving actually, the impact you're giving actually has in the world. It can be almost all or nothing. You probably heard this sentence: a single death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. It's a kind of a cynical view of the world. The truth is that a million deaths are a million tragedies. So if we can actually save more lives or save more people with our money, I do think there's a strong case for doing that. Now, again, for those of you familiar with EA, the starting point, okay, I've bought this idea of effectiveness. How do I choose where to give? Well, we want problems that are big, because if we solve a big problem, we're going to be able to help a lot of people. We want problems that are tractable, problems in which resources actually make a difference. And we want problems that are uncrowded or relatively neglected, the problems that are not in the media, that do not have all the attention, and where all the best opportunities are not taken. Once we have those problem areas to work with, we need to find programs that are supported by evidence and that help the most per dollar. And we do not have to do this on our own. Giving What We Can actually has one of the best pages on the best charities to donate to. So if you go in here, you can look at recommendations for different cost areas, different charity evaluators, how to donate with tax deductibility from different countries. So actually the hard work of how to give effectively is done for you guys. Okay, so that is the case for Giving Where We Can, a community of people who care about giving more and giving more effectively. But what I think makes Giving Where We Can special and actually different to many other EAE organizations is what we call the pledge. If you guys go to givingwherewecan.org/pledge, you will see what the pledge means. I'm going to just read this for a moment. I recognize that I can use part of my income to do a significant amount of good. Since I can live well enough on a smaller income, I pledge that from now until X, I shall give Y to whichever organizations can most effectively use it to improve the lives of others, now and in the years to come. I make this pledge freely, openly, and sincerely. Okay, so this is the pledge. I will talk about the X and Y variables in a moment, but the idea is making a commitment. The decision of whether to help others or not, I don't think it's a decision that you want to keep making again and again. You know, it's not like, okay, now I do think that helping others is important. In a few months, I may actually change my mind. No, I think that if you've come to the conclusion that helping others is important, making it a habit, making it something automatic, and making it something that's an important part of your life is probably one of the best decisions you can make. I think it's incredibly effective because you make the choice once and execute constantly. And I think it's really, really gratifying to actually make of giving something that you do regularly and something that you share with others. So that's where the Giving Where We Can community comes in. First of all, you share a commitment, and then you support each other in that commitment, and in actually trying to understand what that commitment can deliver to others. Why take a giving pledge instead of just giving regularly? Well, I've given you my personal reasons, but if we look at this more generally, first of all, there's the concept of the individual commitment. I do think it is worth it to take the time to think about this decision and make it once and make it permanent. Second, there's the community. Joining a community of people who have pledged is really, really, really gratifying. And third, and very important, is cultural change. If we donate silently, if we donate without telling others, we are probably not taking the opportunity to have a much greater impact by influencing others. So, there's multiple studies out there that prove that when people know that others are giving more, they tend to give more. So having a public list of members, being public about the pledge, I think it's something that sets an example of what is possible to others who maybe have just not even ever thought about this. So I think that the benefits at the individual level, at the community level of doing this together, and at the wider society level are really, really in synergy, and they're definitely worth taking. There's different sorts of pledges. I'm going to be talking about the Giving Where We Can pledge, which is the core of the community we're now talking about. How much will you choose to give? Okay, as you saw in the pledge before, there were 2 slots for until when and how much you're giving. So the core of Giving Where We Can is what we call the Giving Where We Can pledge. And that's basically pledging to give 10% of your income for life to the most effective charities. So why 10%? Well, it is a significant amount, but it's an amount that's achievable for many. It's an amount that's important. It's taking an effort. You're joining a community of people that are being generous. They're just not just like checking the mark of, yes, I give some money, but they're being relevantly generous. And it can be reached. It can be reached by many of us. But I said many, I did not say all of us. So maybe you think, okay, 10% sounds steep. Well, there's this concept right now called the try giving pledge, where you can pledge to give any amount you want for any amount of time you decide to. But the idea is that you do commit to it. So try the commitment, see what it feels like, see what it's like to give regularly, and then decide what to do next. And then there's actually people who have come to a different conclusion. You know, some of us think, okay, I think that making giving part of my regular life is what I want to do. And the percentage just works. If I'm making more, I'm going to give more. If for any reason I'm making less, I'm going to give less. But some people think, okay, well, maybe my income is kind of predictable. This is what happened to Toby Ord, for example. He made this calculation of how much money he was probably going to make during his career as an academic. And he looked at how much money he needed to live with a reasonable welfare standard. And he decided to give anything beyond that amount. So that's what we call the further pledge. And there are some members that have taken the further pledge. And there's constant innovation around the pledge and constant tweaking around the pledges. So right now, for example, companies can pledge. So there's the company pledge. And there's a growing number of companies that have decided to give a percentage of their profits every year to the most effective charities. And there's people who go well beyond, people who try giving and do not take the pledge, that do not end up taking the pledge, people who try giving and then end up taking the pledge. I think that where you start is a very, very personal decision, but I do think that making the commitment is quite a game changer. At least it has been for me. So if you're thinking about the pledge, and if it's something that you may want to do, what we suggest is that the amount, first of all, is meaningful for you. You know, if you're just donating occasionally, it's probably not something that, as I mentioned, is something you consider an important part of your life, but also make it sustainable. You know, if you don't want to go to a level where you're not going to be able to keep up your pledge. So, you know, there's not going to be a lawyer knocking at your door if you're not complying with your pledge, but we do think it makes a difference if you're really serious about the commitment. Second, give an amount that's supported by those close to you. Hey, if you're a married person, if you're sharing your income with others, this may not be a decision you can make individually. So definitely make sure this is not something that's going to be causing trouble in other areas of your life. And finally, we think that the most important part is to actually get started. So you can get started with any amount and change it over time if you want to. You do not need to go all in from the beginning. If you found that 10% is something you can really do, and you don't think this is going to put you in tremendous stress in the future, I do encourage you to consider the pledge. But if you're in a different situation, there is actually no need to go to 10% from day one. Now, the community. The pledge is the process of joining the community, the commitment that makes you part of Giving What We Can. What is Giving What We Can, and what does it look like today? Well, it's a community that cares about doing more good, and it cares deeply. It has grown a lot in the recent years, and especially since Luke Freeman took over. For a while, it has been a project that did not have many resources. But right now, and probably just because Giving What We Can just kept growing by itself because it attracted the interest of people, the growth rate has increased a lot. So we are now more than 6,000 members. We have already donated more than $240 million, which I find just amazing. You know, when you look at what we can do together, the impact is really very, very, very big. And when you add up the amounts pledged, considering what people's incomes are, this could add up to $2.4 billion. So what we can achieve as a community is really, 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 I mean, it really goes against that idea of how by ourselves we cannot make a difference. I think that by donating effectively and by donating as a community, our impact can be very, very relevant. And as I mentioned, it's a community that's committed to doing more good. So whether it's through the individual commitment or the community support or the cultural change, the idea is actually to realize that aspiration of effective altruism, of doing the most good possible with our resources, in this case, with our money. And this is just, as you already know, this is just one of many ways to do good. You can do good with your career. Maybe you care about people alive today. Maybe you care about animals. Maybe you care about the long-term future. it's definitely one of many ways to do good. I do find that it is a particularly gratifying one to involve in. And if you're involving with EA ideas, but have not maybe considered what you can actually do just by giving some of your money away, I do encourage you to do it. It's probably one of the, I probably consider taking the pledge one of the best decisions I've made. I know that many pledgers feel the same. When you talk to others, there's a really, really strong sense of community. Many people in the EA community have pledged, others haven't. Others just donate regularly without having made a pledge. I mean, I think it is a plus that does make a difference. And here and on the bottom right corner, well, there's Rob Wiblin, and to the left there's Catherine Lowe with her pledge certificate. And people are really proud to display their pledge. I think that it's a really, I don't know. I think that it's just a very, very, very satisfactory way of helping others and knowing that you're doing it effectively. So I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. GivingWhatWeCan.org. It's as I mentioned, you may be involved in effective altruism in other ways. I think the pledge is a great complement. I encourage you all to look at it. And that's it for the presentation. So I'll just be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Pablo. Okay, so we have some questions here in the Slido. I'll just take them if they're upvoted equally. I'll just pick them more or less randomly. So there's a question here, giving more and giving more effectively. How does Giving What We Can split its efforts between them? And what do you think is more effective?
Okay, I think there's not one single answer, and it depends on the environment. So for example, there are cultural differences across countries. Some countries are more generous already. So in countries where there's a culture of giving, for example, cultures that include a giving season, and they consider that December is the giving month, for example, it's already in people's mindsets to give. I think that the effectiveness message is actually what makes a difference. But in other countries where there's not that much of a culture of giving, I think you have to start with the idea of, okay, why give? The idea of helping people realize where they are in terms of income in the world. So it really does depend on that context. I think that both pieces are absolutely necessary. If you just work on one without the other, the message is kind of missing one of the parts. So what I would say is, wherever you are, find out what's missing the most in the context. See if there's already a culture of giving, then effectiveness will be understood. There will be a common base to start from. But if there's not a culture of giving, you will have to start at why give more.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And if your question is asked from Slido, and if you'd like to, if you don't mind the recording, if you want to sort of jump in and clarify your question or ask a further question, you're also free to do that. Okay, another question we have there on the Slido is there a difference between the Giving What We Can recommended charities and the recommendations by GiveWell?
Yes. Well, first of all, Giving What We Can is cost neutral. As you probably know, GiveWell is focused on global health and development. But the Giving What We Can pledge says nothing about which cost areas or which problem areas you should focus on. So there's definitely room for people with different worldviews, different values to pick the causes that they want to prioritize and give to the most effective charities in those causes. So if you look at the Giving What We Can recommendations, they include recommendations in the global health and development space, and those closely match GiveWell's. But you will also find recommendations in the animal welfare space or long-term future space, existential risks. So the difference is basically this. Giving What We Can does not pick a particular cost area, but it does aggregate recommendations from specialized organizations working on each of the different cost areas.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have a couple of questions of my own. I might jump in here. I'd be interested to hear a little more about the Giving What We Can community. I understand that part of the community is to help keep people committed to effective giving. So I'd be interested, like, what does this look like in practice? Do we have like community meetups or some kind of like, yeah.
Yes, there are different elements in community. Well, first of all, there's of course an overlap with the effective altruism community. So many EA groups make giving what we can themed activities part of their events and their own group activity. So, for example, at the end of the year, there's the Giving What We Can pledge drive, and many groups collaborate to actually try to encourage people to pledge in this yearly pledge drive. So I think there are a lot of elements in common, and I think these can be actually good and engaging activities for many groups. So first of all, there's that. Then there's a large group of volunteers helping Giving What We Can. So there's actually a Slack, and there's a lot of work that's done by volunteers, from content to outreach, to, let's say, podcasts, to creating video. So if any of you guys is interested in maybe helping out with your time, there's a lot that can be done to help Giving What We Can grow. There's the open forum. There's a monthly event that's announced on the website and on Facebook, and anybody can join. And basically, what we have in the open forum is a mix of current pledgers that just sign in to talk to others, and people who are maybe considering taking the pledge or have heard about Giving What We Can and are just curious. And we have lively conversations about what the pledge has meant to us, questions about the commitment, questions about what people are doing. You know, people share what they are giving to and why. So it really helps. It really helps to put faces behind the pledges and actually see what motivates people and what their actual choices are in practice. Hey, do you give once a year? Do you give monthly? Do you give straight from payroll? Do you actually do this differently? Why? How do you think about tax deductibility? So there are many questions to practice, and the open forum is a good place to share this. And then apart from that, there are regional meetups. So depending on time zones, there's the Asia Pacific meetup, there's the Europe meetup. So there are multiple locations to meet other pledgers. In Spain, for example, we recently got all the Spanish pledgers together in an online event. And that is also interesting because you can actually share the cultural differences and what to do from the perspective of your country, for example.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Okay, I have one more question I'd like to ask. That's not in the Slido, and that's about outreach. So I understand that, or get the impression that Giving What We Can is sort of like trying to do kind of like reach out to people to recommend the pledge. Is this happening mainly inside the existing EA community, or does Giving What We Can also reach out to people outside the current EA community?
We do reach out to people outside the EA community. I guess maybe if you guys have been involved or thinking about outreach at all, there's always the issue of like the high fidelity transmission of ideas, etc. There are many concepts that are subtle, but effective giving is probably more straightforward than other entry doors into effective altruism. So we have found that outreach is definitely possible, not very complex, and not very risk prone in this part of like the EA, in part of the EA organizations or EA areas. So effective giving, I think, is something you can definitely do outreach on. So there's of course the community, and the community is probably a very important part of where pledgers come from. But there's also workplace outreach, which is very interesting. So for example, any chance to actually talk about effective giving in workplaces is very interesting. And if you look at the profile of existing EA communities, so for example, there's the EA consulting network. There's a lot of people who work in tech, startup founders. Well, there are certain communities that are tend to be welcoming to the ideas of effective giving. But if any of you guys, again, thinks that you have an opportunity to do some outreach in your workplace, it's something that we do, something that goes well, and something that many people have quite a lot of experience with. Long form content has also proved to be very effective. So whether it's interviews in podcasts, if it's longer articles, so opportunities to have people look into these ideas seriously and calmly have also proved to work very, very, very well. So podcasts are definitely one very, very useful outreach avenue that we do a lot of work. YouTube videos are another. Yes, right now, for example, Look and other people in the community are doing a lot of work on videos, and I think they are also very, very, very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're creating one at the moment because this recording will be posted on the EA for Christians YouTube channel. So maybe this functions as outreach for somebody who stumbles upon it. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Pablo. I think it's time to stop the recording. There's no rush, though. We can stay if you want. You can stay behind for a couple of minutes and chat. But the official part is over now. So thank you, everybody.